Hi, I'm going to try a different style of video today, as I've written a piece of poetry that's quite arcane and cryptic. I thought I'd read you the poem, explain the terms and phrases and words used in it, then read you the poem again when you've got a greater understanding of the meaning of the poetry. So this poem is called Life of the Moon. It's a poem I wrote yesterday on Christmas Day. I don't actually celebrate Christmas myself, though there was a definite vibe there, and I am a believer in the spiritual dimension, so that's how I perceive these holy days. This poem is called Life of the Moon. Read the name of the Lord in the book of life. Fractal patterns of destiny make a mantra of Joshua. Jesus Christ as JC, James Cook as well, to the ends of the earth, in the name of the Lord. The life of the moon, Ankh Effen na Konsu, 3 days in the darkness, to rise from the tomb. The dark of the moon, sublime and subconscious, moon god sin and immortality, toying with temporality. Spear of destiny stabbing the ribs of the god, stabbed in the back, a heart for 4 kings. Holding hands till the last, orders from on high, bring into the fold, sharing civilized gifts. So that's the initial reading of the Life of the Moon. And now I'll explain the words and terms and ideas expressed in this poem. It's a free-form poem written in verses of 4 lines, as you can see here. So I'll start with the Life of the Moon. The first line is, read the name of the Lord in the book of, and the second line is in the book of life. So to read the name of the Lord in the book of life is the ability to see the patterns in reality, how they reflect the impetus of the Creator and the energy of God that is written into the pattern of reality. This is an ability I believe I gained from many years ago when I had a powerful psychedelic experience where the guy who was leading the trip was gradually playing these like Jedi mind tricks to raise our consciousness and open our minds and trick us into seeing into deeper layers of reality. And at one point in the trip, a real peak, he called himself Jesus Christ to me. He introduced himself as Jesus Christ. And when your mind's that open, it has a real impact on you. Any kind of powerful language or experience, it can really rewrite your neural ganglia into a new form. and another part of this experience was a etherical implant next to my left eye that it was all connected in enabling me to become aware of the presence of the Creator and the presence of God. So in this way, this is the essence of the poem, is reading the name of the Lord into the greater reality around us. So that's the first two lines of the Life of the Moon. It has a lot of meaning to me, and it's quite an old spiritual and religious concept as well. So the third line, fractal patterns of destiny. This is, if you can see reality as a pattern, the concept of the pattern of history repeating, and like a fractal where you can zoom in and it's always different, but it's the same fractal pattern and it's just repeating in different forms. This is an idea of the third line, the fractal pattern of destiny. And the fourth line of the first verse is make a mantra of Joshua. So what I'm saying here is that Joshua is the Hebrew name for Jesus Christ, for Jesus. And I'm Jewish, so I really like to call Jesus as his Hebrew name Joshua, which is likely what he was referred to during his lifetime. And to make a mantra of Joshua, a mantra is the repetition of sacred syllables. So the idea behind this, the fractal patterns of destiny, make a mantra of Joshua, is that the name of Joshua or Jesus is repeated in all these different ways throughout technological civilization and throughout our reality, and they comprise a mantra, a repetition of sacred syllables that heightens consciousness and has various blessing effects to repeat the mantra. So then we go into the second stanza. I say, Jesus Christ as JC. So I'm using the initials of the commonly called Jesus Christ. Then the second line is James Cook as well. So James Cook was the captain of the ship that was credited with the initial discovery and settling of Australia by the British Empire. He was Captain James Cook, and he has the same initials as Jesus Christ, JC. So JC as well. This is an example of the name of the Lord in the Book of Life and the repetition of the sacred syllables of Joshua as JC and James Cook JC. So, to the ends of the earth in the name of the Lord. So Captain Cook, he went right to the ends of the earth, you know, here at Sydney. Botany Bay is just around the corner where the first fleet landed, and this is the Land's End. This is about as far east as you can get, the east coast of Australia. So this is an example of JC and the pattern of the name of the Lord reaching to the ends of the earth. So the third stanza begins, the life of the moon, Ankh Efen Na Khonsu. Ankh Efen Na Khonsu is an ancient Egyptian name. This is a name Aleister Crowley believed was the name of his previous incarnation as a high priest of Egypt. So Ankh Efen Na Khonsu, in one translation, literally means the life of the moon. The Ankh is a symbol of immortality. Khonsu is the moon god in ancient Egypt. But as you'll see, this is also related to the name of the Lord. It contains these divine names such as Ankh and Khonsu. 3 days in the darkness to rise from the tomb. So this is referring to not only to Easter and the the resurrection of Joshua after he was crucified, but also to the actual celestial cycles of the moon, that the dark of the moon is also 3 days when the moon is hidden from us. And this is related to the life of the moon as a celestial object, but it's also related to the name Ankh Efen Nakonsu, as in Ankh is related to immortality, and the immortality of the moon, that though it goes into darkness and becomes dark and we can't see it for 3 days every month, it's always reborn to full moon. So the 4th verse begins, the dark of the moon, emphasizing this concept of the life of the moon and the 3 days of darkness. Sublime and subconscious. Moon god Sin and immortality. Sin was the Babylonian name for the moon god, as well as these days meaning illicit action by a human that creates bad karma. But all these ideas are floating around there, the moon god and the concept of immortality, then toying with temporality. Temporality is to do with time. So it's as though these spiritual myths and concepts are playing with time and the way time works. Because for mundane reality, you live, you die, everything that arises falls. But the divine then says, wait, what if that didn't have to happen? What if you could arise and fall but rise again, which is not the ordinary mundane way of things. So the 5th verse begins Spear of Destiny stabbing. So the Spear of Destiny was a name for the weapon that was used to stab the crucified Joshua. And it's meant to have magical powers. It's also related to ancient fairy myth of the Spear of Lu from the Tuatha Dé Danann, which was the fairies of ancient Ireland. They also had powers of destiny, and the Spear of Destiny was related from a much earlier period in Celtic mythology. Spear of Destiny stabbing, the ribs of the god. This spear, after it was said to have stabbed the crucified Joshua, it was become invested with the powers of God and would give the possessor the ability to rule the world. This is the mythos of the Spear of Destiny, due to the fact that it entered into the sacred God. Stabbed in the back, a heart for 4 kings. So the other JC in the poem, James Cook, he was also stabbed in the back. He was met his fate in Hawaii when, due to a whole series of events, he was killed, and that was the end of his great work on Earth, his amazing achievements, scientific achievements that are still used to this day. But the Hawaiians believed he was a great man as well. They actually also believed that James Cook, or JC, was the moon god. That was part of their first contact shock, that James Cook arrived at the same time as the festival of the Hawaiian moon god, and they then related Cook to their moon god. But despite that, there was a whole series of issues and misunderstandings, and Cook was killed by them and stabbed in the back as he was leading a Hawaiian chief to his ship, because the Hawaiian chief had been stealing from the explorers, and Cook was trying to explain to him about the law who was taking him back to the ship, possibly as a prisoner. So the last line in this verse is a heart for 4 kings. So this was Cook's fate, according to some stories. There is some controversy over what was the real issue with Captain Cook, but I thought this was quite fantastic, associated with him being related to the moon god, that there is supposedly, though now it's disputed, there's supposedly a ritual among the Hawaiian prehistoric tribes for the eating of the heart as a cannibalistic ritual, that you eat the heart of a great man and you take their power. So one version of the story of Cook's death goes that his heart was eaten by the 4 Hawaiian kings, as he was a great man related to the moon god. And it's generally agreed that after killing him, the Hawaiians took his body and immolated it and returned only small parcels to the Endeavour. But a possibility is that he was eaten in a cannibalistic ritual. So this is what this line is referring to. Also the mystical correspondences of the of the moon god at all times, from Joshua and his reincarnation to Captain Cook and his death. The moon god made a part in all these events. So the final verse, holding hands till the last. Cook was holding the hand of the Hawaiian chieftain as he led him to the ship when he was stabbed in the back by one of the chieftain's warriors. Orders from on high is the next line. And Captain Cook had orders from Britain to express absolute tolerance and respect towards the native peoples that he was to come in contact with, and try and do them as little harm as possible. That was the orders from the High Command in Britain. And this also relates to Joshua's mission from God, that he was on orders from God, he was on a mission from God, and he had a very powerful impact in the human world with his spiritual connection to the High One. Bring into the fold, sharing civilized gifts. So these are the last 2 lines of the Life of the Moon poem. And bringing into the fold, this can relate again both to Joshua and Captain Cook, that Joshua brought a great portion of human civilization with his sacrifice into the fold of Judeo-Christianism. So the fold can be considered an angelic effect. It can be considered on one level from the Good Shepherd and the fold of the sheep, but on a more mystical level, the fold is the law of returns with the angelic and heavenly power of Christianity and belief in God. The fold returns tenfold the energy you put into it. This is another level of meaning from the fold. Bring into the fold. But related back to JC, he also brought a great deal of the Pacific into the fold of technological civilization, which was a great effort. In his reaching out and journeying to the ends of the earth, he brought all these aspects of technological civilization to the rest of the world in a great deal. Sharing civilized gifts. So this is a reference to both Christmas Day, which was the day I wrote this poem on, and also the impact of Joshua and Cook, that through their reaching out to humanity with their missions, they brought the gifts of civilization, which such as law and agriculture and etc. So that's how I end the poem. So now after I've explained it to you, I'll read it again, and you might have a better idea of what I'm talking about in this poem. Life of the moon. Read the name of the Lord in the book of life. Fractal patterns of destiny make a mantra of Joshua. Jesus Christ as JC, James Cook as well, to the ends of the earth in the name of the Lord. The life of the moon, Ankh Effen Nakonsu, 3 days in the darkness to rise from the tomb. The dark of the moon, sublime and subconscious, moon god sin and immortality, toying with temporality. Spear of destiny stabbing the ribs of the god, stabbed in the back, a heart for 4 kings. Holding hands till the last, orders from on high, bring into the fold, sharing civilized gifts. Thank you very much.